Aloha, it's CreativeNameToStandOut again with another battle report. This time I'm bringing you a 2,500 point game between my Dark Elves and an opponent's Empire army. Now if you've seen a couple of my battle reports, you're probably familiar with this army. It's usually on the table when I'm playing my Chaos Legion's army, and over the course of a couple of games, his warrior priest has been known to flee, and so I jokingly gave him the name Benito the Coward. My opponent has kind of taken on that name, and he's pretty much lived up to his name. He always seems to be fleeing off the table, not really getting his hands dirty. But last game he stood his ground against the Pyre Legion. He even got in a challenge against my general. He did lose. We're going to say he didn't quite die. He just kind of got severely injured, and I guess a spark was in him at that moment. And now we're going to start calling him Benito the Humbled. So this is the first game with Benito the Humbled. He's also been promoted to Art Lector, and that's pretty much the only narrative we'll have in this game. So other than that, it's not really a narrative game. Just wanted to point that out. So starting with deployment. On the left we have 5 Pistoliers, then 10 Inner Circle Knights, a Hellblaster Volley Gun, and an Engineer. In the center we have a unit of 10 Archers, another unit of 10 Handgunners with a level 4 Fire Mage. In the backfield you can see a Great Cannon. Here we have a unit of Great Swords with a Witch Hunter and a BSB attached. Then we have a small unit of Crossbows, then a unit of Halberdiers with the Arch Elector in there. And then finally on the far right here we have 10 Handgunners with the level 4 of Death. Also on the hill in the back we have the other Great Cannon. So going into my deployment, directly across from that Great Cannon are my 5 Doomfire Warlocks. Then we have the majority of my army in this shot. We have a Cold One Chariot, the large unit of Dread Spears with a BSB inside. My level 4s in the back, not attached at all. Then we have this unit of Dark Shards with the level 2 inside of that. And then finally another Cold One Chariot. In this picture you can see my new temple I just bought from Mini Monsters, and it's all painted up. It looks good. And then more importantly we have my large unit of Witch Elves with the Cauldron of Blood attached to it. Then finally on the far right we have my 2 units of Dark Riders, and they look like they've already vanguarded up also. Finally, I was the only one that brought scouts. My opponent knew I was bringing him, so he made sure not to leave any vulnerable spots in his backfield. So I just put him over here by the hill, by the wall, because it provides hard cover, and plus it looks great. So here's an overview of the board. We rolled to see who gets to go first, and my opponent gets first turn. I think I had fewer drops. I got the +1, but he still rolled higher than I did. So here we go, Empire turn 1. So here's a wide shot. You can see that his fast cav is trying to move away from my Dark Riders on the far left. He's going to try to position his Heavy Knights to counter my Dark Riders. It's not going to be terribly successful, but he's going to try that out in the beginning. And then we move in here. He doesn't really move too much. He moves the Great Swords up against the wall, so they're a little bit protected from my shooting that I have on the field in the center. So this is the first time my opponent's ever brought 2 level 4 wizards. It gives them a lot of options. I'm a little skeptical though about how effective it's going to be to have 2 level 4s. One of the spells I need to watch out for is definitely Flame Cage though throughout the game. He's going to get Sword of Ruin off on the Handgunners to help him out with the wounding. And then finally with 1 dice he's going to get off Fireball, and as you can see in this picture it does a couple wounds to my Shades. Didn't like to see that, but there's really nothing I can do about it. We go in the shooting phase, and he manages to shoot off 2 of the Doomfire Warlocks with his Handgunners on the far right. In the center, the Handgunners are able to finish off the Shades despite the wall. The Cannonball takes aim at my Chariot and blows it to pieces. And then finally, another cannon takes aim at the Doomfire Warlocks, and despite the fact that they died to musket fire, they're able to shrug off a cannonball somehow. So here we go into Dark Elf turn 1, and I'll go ahead and just talk about my game plan. I really feel like my army is just kind of in a better setup than his, so all I really need to do is close the gap, and once I get into combat I'll just swipe everything off the board. So the only real advantage he has over me right now is the shooting and the magic maybe. He just has more options. I just don't think 2 level 4s from Empire really multiplies itself as a threat compared to other armies. So yep, that's the game plan. I'm just going to push forward and hopefully get into combat. So the first charges I declare are with the Doomfire Warlocks into those Handgunners. I think I need a 9 to get there. Actually, I know I needed a 9. Unfortunately, I don't make it, and I lose one of the Doomfire Warlocks to a stand and shoot. Here's an overview of the board. After movement, you can see I'm just trying to close the gap like I mentioned earlier. On the left side, we have my Dark Riders moving up the flank. They again got out of the line of sight of those Knights. My opponent was trying to stop that, but he can't. We go into the magic phase, and it's pretty big. It's a huge magic phase, but I don't really need any bomb spells really. So I'm going to really focus on using my magic missiles to clear out some of those small shooting units he has all across the board. and I do that fairly successfully. He tries to stop a Doom Bolt, but I still get it through, but it's not that big of a deal. And then Wild Form fails. So here's the unit that got hit with the 2 earlier magic missiles, and then the Doom Bolt. And then we go into the shooting phase. And so over here we have the Dark Riders taking aim at those Pistoliers. I kill 3 of them. They fail their panic check and they run through the Witches, but they don't take any more damage from that. We move on to my Dread Spears, who kill off a couple Archers here and there, and even the Chariot is able to kill off 2 Spearmen. In Empire turn 2, my opponent doesn't declare any charges. Instead, he kind of pushes some of his units back to create some space between our armies. He then moves his detachment of crossbowmen up into this area, as you can see, to redirect my Dread Spears and to stop the Chariot from getting in next turn. This will give him another turn of shooting, basically, too. He then moves his Wizard from the Gunman unit to the Archer unit that you see in this picture. And then my opponent then again makes the mistake on trying to use his Knights to stop my Dark Riders from getting around him. It's not going to work. I'm still going to be able to get on each side of his flank if I choose to, but I guess he needs to learn that firsthand. And then finally, his Pistoliers don't rally, but they're just on the board. So we go into the magic phase, and of course my priority is to stop Flame Cage. I feel like that's a very big threat for against my army, so I stop it. He then goes for Purple Sun, and I say the exact phrase, that's not very effective against me, so I'll let it go through. And immediately I lose my Sorceress. I lose my level 4. I rolled a 6. I rolled her dice. It was like a big dice amongst a bunch of little ones, and I was like, the Sorceress is the big dice. I need a 6 to lose her. And I lose her, so it sucks. On top of that, he gets 6 dice back from his lore attribute. Luckily, Soul Blight fails to go off, and then the other spell doesn't actually do any wounds to me. In the shooting phase, he takes his cannon and shoots it down the flanks of, or the front of my Dread Spears, kills a bunch of them, so that's good for thinning them out. And then he unloads his Hellblaster Volley Gun into my Witches. He actually hits and wounds a ton. I just make a lot of ward saves. So even though I had some bad luck with the magic there, it bounces out from my saves in the shooting. In Dark Elf turn 2, I go ahead and I try to clear out these crossbowmen with these 2 charges, and then I fail another charge with my Doomfire Warlocks trying to go after his cannon. Again, needed a 9. With my level 4 gone, I'm really going to have to lean on my Doomfire Warlocks, so I use both their spells this phase. I get Soul Blight off on the Halberdiers, and when I go for Doom Bolt, I just fail it. I go for the big one. In the shooting phase, these Dark Shards take aim at that smaller unit that shot last turn with magic missiles and wipe it out. Everything passes its panic check. And then over here on the flank, the Dark Riders kill off 2 of the crewmen on the Hellblaster, and I kill 1 random Knight. Finally, in the combat phase, this combat goes pretty much as expected, and I reform. So here we go into Empire turn 3, and here's a look of the board as it stands. No charges are going to be declared this turn. My opponent does rally these Pistoliers. That just sucks, but there you go. And then over here, instead of moving forward, he starts scooting back some, which I think is a good idea. And then I believe he fails a march test over here, and so just consigns these Knights to their fate. They were in a really bad position. They were trying to stop something they couldn't have. So, I mean, they're lost. Okay, so here we go into Empire turn 3, and this is a very painful turn for me. He goes for a giant fireball. I use my Dispel Scroll. I wish I would use this for Purple Sun, but I didn't. Crest Lineth goes off, targeting my level 2, and he gets Flame Cage, a spell I've been trying to stop on my Witches. So, of course, Caress kills off the level 2 pretty easily, and then Flame Cage doesn't do anything to my Witches. Those are just models that fell down. But more importantly, that's really going to hurt me when I charge those Knights. And then we go in the shooting phase, and these 2 snipers here kill off my last 2 Doomfire Warlocks. Man. And then finally, he turns his Hellblaster around and evaporates one of the Dark Rider units. Luckily, the other unit passes its break check. But yeah, that was a very, very painful turn. So here's an overview of the board as we go into Dark Elf turn 3, and this is the turn where I'm going to start charging his meat of his army finally. So I am going to declare a charge with the Witches into the Knights, and I'm going to also charge the Spearmen and Chariots into one of those 2 units. So I wasn't sure which one. The Halberdiers are a little bit longer charge for the Spearmen, whereas the Great Swords are a little bit longer charge for the Chariot. And both are not very ideal, being that I've taken so many casualties. I have the Arch Lector with the halberds, and so they're going to have hatred and rerolls a hit and whatnot. and then they got the great swords. And the one thing I'm really thinking at this point is, who would I rather get flanked by? Because I don't think I'm going to break them. I do think I'll win the combat, I just don't think I'll break either one of those units. So I just go for the shorter of the two charges. I'm going to hit those great swords. I also choose that because I'd rather the halberdiers flank the chariot rather than the great swords flank my unit. So that was my line of thinking. Hopefully I'll break them, but you never know. Well, actually, odds are against me, I should say. Other than that, I put the Dark Riders into the Hellblaster volley gun, and then I use my Dark Shards to take some pot shots at those archers, and I kill like 3. So other than that, I don't have any magic except for the Altar of Cain, and I'm going to try every turn to cast that Fury of Cain spell, and I'm going to get stopped every time. So I'm not going to post that up going forward in my magic phases. We go into this combat, and things just don't go great. I win the combat. He's stubborn, of course, so he's going to stick, but I win it at the cost of losing my BSB. He only allocates a couple attacks to him, but those couple of attacks get through my armor, and I lose him. I don't even kill his 2 characters, so this is not looking good. He's going to be able to flank charge me with the halberdiers next turn. I knew that was going to happen, but I didn't also think I was going to lose my BSB. So not in a very good position here on the right. Hopefully I can get these witches over here. Speaking of which, they destroy the knights. So that's about it for this turn. Going to Empire turn 4. So sure enough, in Empire turn 4, he's going to charge the flank of my chariot with his halberdiers. And then these guys are going to move around and just be a constant thorn on my side. I don't have a musician in this unit, so I'm never going to be able to turn around and shoot him. In Empire turn 4, my opponent has a very strong hold on the magic phase, so there's not going to be a lot I can do. My goal is to try to stop him from helping him out in that little combat on the right. I need to hold him up for as long as possible so I can get those witches over there. And I'm fairly successful. He is going to get a soul blight off, but I mean, that's inconvenient, but I can't stop everything. I count myself pretty lucky, actually, being that most of these spells didn't go off. So we go into the shooting phase, and his cannon takes aim at this beautiful shot down the flank against my Cauldron of Blood. I feel like I'm going to lose it, but thankfully he just blows himself up, so that saves me a lot of trouble. The rest of his shooting is actually pretty bad. Also, his archers and pistoliers combine for 1 dead Dark Shard, and we go straight into combat. So in the combat phase, I'm banking on the chariot just being tough enough to withstand all those attacks from the halberdiers, and in the end, it actually is. It's enough, and I don't kill very many. I think I kill off both of his characters I injured earlier, the BSB and the Witch Hunter, but I still lose. I think I lose by 2, and luckily I stick, which, considering the circumstances, this is really good because I didn't have a BSB. So they're held up, and hopefully I can bring these witches over now. So before we go into Dark Elf turn 4, we have these Dark Riders finish off that cannon and face the rear of this unit. This is what the board looks like as we go into Dark Elf turn 4, and I charge the Dark Riders into the rear of that unit, and then I flip the witches around to start making their way towards that main combat we have that's left. I also take the Dark Shards and hop the fence, or the stone wall, so that they're a little bit more protected against those pistoliers, and we pretty much just move into combat. So this combat did not go at all like I expected. I really thought this was going to be easy points. I sent the Dark Riders in there, and I killed the archers, a lot of them, but they hit me back and took 2 down with them, so that's not that great. I did win combat. Unfortunately, his unit was within 3 inches of its parent unit, and so was stubborn. And so they weren't going to break. So I'm stuck there, and I feel like, too many losses considering the opponent I was fighting. We go into the main combat, and unfortunately for me, the chariot does fall this turn. That's going to bring that unit into the flank of my Dread Spears, which is going to rob me of the +3 bonus for combat resolution for having ranks, because now he's in the flank of that unit. And that's enough to break me. I break, and he runs me down, and this is what it looks like after he reforms. So things are looking very, very bad, but luckily the witches are facing the right way. In Empire turn 5, the Great Swords charge the Dark Riders, the Halberdiers charge the Dark Shards. This engineer is trying to run away from all the danger, and we jump into the magic phase. So he has he's going to do whatever he wants in the magic phase, basically. So I try to stop Fire Cloak, mainly because I'm going to lose the Dark Riders, but I want to kill the archers before I lose them. So I stop that just so I can kill some points, and then he gets off some various spells that will help him in a combat he's already going to win. So with that, we just jump right into combat, and of course, he wins. So the Halberdiers beat these Dark Shards pretty easily and reform, and then the Dark Riders die, but they do kill off the archers. Okay, well, I'm very upset with myself because I did not take a picture of what happened right before this shot, and I wish I would have. It was so important, I felt like, or it was just a good picture of all the different things that could have happened at this point. So please imagine, if you will, that my witches are still facing those great swords perfectly. They're just facing each other, and in between them is that wizard that you can see that's already behind the great swords. And so I was faced with a decision here. I could, one, charge the unit at the wizard, to which he would flee, and then I could either redirect into this unit that you see here in the bottom right, or I could continue to go towards those great swords. I could separate off the chariot into the wizard. Same scenario, I could just separate the chariot. Now if I did that, there's a flame cage on that unit, and they would be very vulnerable to it once I move that chariot. So I was faced with all these different options, and I decided to charge the wizard. I had to. It was the most in the way, and of course he fled. Then he had the option to either double flee with the great swords, or stay there if he wanted to. I guess that's an option, but he could double flee, or I could redirect my charge into the halberdiers, to which he could flee. Now, when he rolled for the wizard, as you can see where it is, he needed a 4 or better to get on the other side of that wizard. If he rolled a 3 or less, I would have caught him. And so that wasn't very enticing for me to charge the great swords. Whereas if the halberdiers, I think, ran a 7 or less, I was still hypothetically able to catch him if I rolled really high. But you see, those were my choices, and I went with the, albeit unlikely but more likely option. I wish I hadn't, because he rolled a 3. So if I would have charged the great swords, he wouldn't have been able to clear the wizard, and I would have been able to catch him. But I made my choice. Ended up being a pretty decent choice, because he did roll a 3. I needed an 8 to catch him, and I just didn't get him. So this is what it looks like after I failed, but my opponent was in a great position, and he made some really good choices. And so with that, the Empire wins. I don't know if you're watching this or if you're just listening to it. If you're just listening to it, while I was giving you that last explanation, I showed slides 6 for both sides. All it was that his fast cavalry directed my last chance to get into combat with him. So it was a very good move on my opponent's I don't know what I'm trying to say, my opponent's behalf. So I want to congratulate him. That was really good. So it was a really fun game. I love how the battlefield developed. I hope you enjoyed that aspect of the game. It just felt very dynamic and lively, the battlefield. I like that he's made these little units actually work in this game. Usually it's not so successful for him, and this time he just played very well, and so I loved it. I lost in good Dark Elf fashion. I was too arrogant, thought I would just go forward and kill him, but he pulled off some really clever moves and pulled out this win, and quite deservingly. So I'm going to leave you with some of these end shots here of some of the more cinematic shots I took when we played this game. We played this game over 2 days, so we played the first 2 rounds one day, took a break, and came back to it. So I hope you enjoyed this. I really enjoyed making this for everyone. Please, again, comment, subscribe if you like. I really appreciate it. And I'll have another one hopefully up in a week.